All right, let's talk about something big that's on the horizon for Nigeria's economy. And I mean big. We're looking at a complete and total overhaul of the country's tax system. And trust me, it's set to change just about everything for you, for small businesses, and for the big corporations too.
So, you're going to want to mark your calendars for this one. January 1st, 2026. That's the day a whole new era of taxation kicks off in Nigeria. And look, this isn't just some minor adjustment or a little tweak here and there. Nope, we are talking about a fundamental reboot of a system that's been around for decades. So that leads to the obvious question.
Why, right? Why go through such a massive, complicated change right now? Well, to put it simply, the old system just wasn't cutting it anymore. It was really struggling to keep up with the modern world.
I mean, the old system was frankly a mess. It was this tangled web of confusing laws, you had taxes on top of taxes, and the burden fell on just a small group of taxpayers because the tax base was so narrow. It was complicated, it was inefficient, and for most people, it was just a massive headache to try and figure out. This reboot, it's designed to fix all of that.
Okay, so let's get to the part you probably care about most. What does this actually mean for you, the average person, or for the small business owner trying to make a living? Well, the first major piece of this puzzle is all about providing some real, direct financial relief. Let's see how they plan to do it.
Now, this is a really big deal. Under these new laws, if you earn 800,000 naira or less in a single year, you will pay zero personal income tax. Absolutely nothing. This is a huge move aimed squarely at putting more money, more purchasing power directly into the pockets of low-income earners.
And hey, it's not just about individuals. Small businesses are getting a massive leg up. The annual turnover you need to hit before you start paying tax is jumping from 25 million naira all the way up to 100 million naira. That's a gigantic leap. The whole idea is to help small and medium-sized businesses grow, reinvest in themselves, and create more jobs, all without that immediate tax burden.
Okay, let's break down the personal income tax changes a little more. You see here, the old system basically just made the minimum wage tax-free. Now it's all income up to 800,000 naira. And check out the top rate. Before, you'd hit a 24% tax rate on any income over $3.2 million. The new top rate is slightly higher, at 25%, but, and this is a big but, it only kicks in for people earning over $50 million a year. The old consolidated relief allowance is also being swapped out. The goal here is pretty clear. Make the whole thing more progressive. Ease the load on lower and middle earners and ask a bit more from the highest earners. And the good news keeps coming when we look at value-added tax, or VAT. The new laws are getting rid of VAT on things that affect every single family. We're talking basic food items, educational books and school fees, public transportation, and essential medical supplies. This is a very direct way to try and bring down the cost of living on the things we all need every day.
So with all these tax cuts, you've got to be asking, where's the government going to make up the money? And that is a great question. It brings us to the second major part of this whole strategy, widening the tax net to find new sources of revenue and close up some old loopholes.
And whoa, here's one of the biggest changes you'll see. The capital gains tax for companies, it's tripling. It's jumping from just 10% all the way up to 30%. What this does is it aligns it with a main corporate income tax rate. Why? Well, it gets rid of the incentive for companies to cleverly call their profits capital gains just so they can pay a lower tax rate. The idea is simple. A profit is a profit, and it should be taxed consistently.
And you know what? The taxman is finally catching up with the 21st century. For the very first time, profits from digital and virtual assets, yep, think cryptocurrencies and all those other digital transactions, are now officially going to be taxed. This just shows how important the digital economy has become in Nigeria.
Okay, this next one sounds a little complicated. Controlled foreign company rules. But the idea behind it is actually pretty straightforward. It's basically a new rule to stop Nigerian companies from stashing their profits in foreign subsidiaries just to dodge taxes back home. So if a foreign company could have paid out its profits but chose not to, Nigeria can now step in and tax those profits anyway.
And here's another clever loophole that's being slammed shut. Before, you could sell shares in some offshore holding company that owned a Nigerian company, and you might have been able to avoid Nigerian tax altogether. Well, not anymore. The new law is crystal clear. These kinds of indirect deals are now going to trigger a tax bill right here in Nigeria.
So you've got all these new rules. It sounds like a lot to handle, right? Well, that's why the third big piece of this whole reform is focused on making the entire system simpler and smarter. The goal is to make it way easier and more transparent for everybody to comply.
And this right here is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Instead of having to deal with this patchwork of different levies, the education tax, the IT levy, all these others, companies will now just pay one single consolidated 4% development levy. That's it. One calculation, one payment. You can just imagine how much this is going to cut down on paperwork and headaches.
Think of this as getting a referee in the game. For the very first time, taxpayers are getting an independent body called the Tax Ombudsman. This new office is being created specifically to handle disputes between you and the tax authorities. It's designed to be a neutral party, making sure everything is fair and giving people and businesses a clear way to get their complaints heard.
And of course, the whole system is going digital. Mandatory e-invoicing is going to be rolled out, which should make things way more transparent and efficient. Plus, and this is a big win for businesses, they'll now be able to claim back the VAT they paid on a much wider range of things, like services and assets. That's going to be great for their cash flow.
Okay, so we've looked at the tax cuts, we've seen where the new money is coming from, and we've talked about making the system simpler. So let's just pull back for a second and look at the big picture. What is the ultimate goal here, and what does the road ahead really look like?
You know, this quote from the Minister of Finance, Wale Edun, really gets right to the heart of it. A huge part of the intention here is to put more money, more purchasing power in the hands of those who are at the lower end of the scale. The thinking is, if everyday Nigerians have more money to spend, that's good for business and the entire economy.
So when you boil it all down, the goals are pretty clear and, honestly, very ambitious. They want a system that's simpler and fairer, one that brings the booming digital economy into the fold. They want to provide real relief to low-income earners and small businesses, attract investment from both home and abroad, and ultimately kickstart some serious economic growth for the whole country.
So there you have it. The laws are on the books. This is probably the biggest, most transformative change to Nigeria's financial landscape in a very long time. But the real work and the real test, that all starts now, with implementation. So the billion naira question remains. Will all these bold changes on paper actually translate into real growth and a new era of prosperity for Nigeria? Only time will tell.